Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Love Retro BTW, across Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I do a podcast every Saturday called Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, a retrospective look at the wonderful world of retro gaming, from interviews to guests. Join us every Saturday, like a Saturday morning cartoon, starting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, if you're on Twitter, please join the brand new retro gaming community, a place to share, connect, and show your love for the retro gaming community. All the links are down below. And remember, enjoy the Gamers Week podcast.
Coming up on Gamers Week podcast.
As I understand it, he's just going to be playing himself, like he's Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage, and he'll probably be a survivor.
Oh, that's boring. Come on,
no,
make
it's
him
not.
a freaking killer.
Like, imagine you're in a game and everybody chooses Nicolas Cage.
Right, so many Nicolas Cages running around.
And then the killer is just like, I'm surrounded by Nicolas Cage.
What was I gonna say? I don't know now. What is anything even?
These are deep questions, way too deep for Wednesday night.
Shall we start?
If you're good.
I think I'm good.
All right.
All right. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. What I wanted to ask was, does my mic sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I tasted a hint of passive aggressiveness there.
No, not at all. I messed around with my this microphone interface. So if it sounds good, then I don't have to play with it. I don't have to fiddle with it. Not while we're recording, you know. All right. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 73, and today is Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. My name is Donnie G. Retro, and I'll be your host this evening, but I'm not alone. With me, as always, are my two gracious co-hosts. The first host has been asking us to refer to him as the all-knowing podcast daddy after two of his guesses made it into the Video Game Hall of Fame. We have with us Mr. Ryan Payne, a.k.a. Retro Game Brews. Buddy, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, and it's going to happen someday. I will be the unanimous decision for Podcast Daddy. So
you'll go 3 for 3 on your guesses?
That's right. So once I go 3 for 3, you heard it here, folks.
Whoever gets to the first 3 of 3, you'll have the Podcast Daddy title until you get taken down again.
I like that.
I mean, I got 4 of 6 for our end of the year prediction, so...
That's not 6 of 6. Just saying.
That wasn't the thing. You said
right.
3, and I got 4.
Of 3, so
No.
it's 100%. It's a percentage.
I feel
Math
like
is
you guys
hard.
are changing the rules.
We like to move the goalposts sometimes.
Keep it just a little bit out of reach. And my second co-host, which you've heard her voice, now knows what it's like to be Ryan and put up a big fat 0 in her guesses.
Oh, man.
He was riding high and then he got brought back down to earth.
Yeah, but you threw me down there with him.
I didn't. You threw yourself down there by not having any of your guesses win. So ipso facto, it's not my fault. with us is Blue Williams. Blue, how are you doing tonight?
Okay, yeah. No, I see what kind of episode we're going to have today. Okay.
I woke up and chose violence today.
I'm ready for this. Bring it on.
I noticed on our reviews, reactions, and requests, Blue also chose violence with the last one, but we'll get to that.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. Somebody else said it.
I'm going to have to read it, so it's...
Yep.
I own it. I accept it. And with that note, let's go ahead and move on to our reviews, reactions, and requests. At 2BK2 says Redfall was both too hyped and too rushed to have it released in its state. Sad that Microsoft didn't postpone the launch indefinitely. You can question yourself if they even had any QA testers at all. My sentiments exactly.
Mm-hmm.
At GoldenEye1971 said, love the George Michael parody. Made my day. There's more where that came from, my friend.
And I'll say we got a lot of people who were like, man, that was perfect. We loved it. So kudos to you, Donnie.
Yeah, way to go. No one will ever live up to your very important poll ever again.
And at SassySunny007 says, good episode this week. Effortlessly done. Effortlessly.
Hooked on phonics, work for me.
Effortlessly. It just rolls off the tongue now.
And now, it's time for the...
He's past the others. The last cell, you keep to the right.
I already know what this is.
This is epic.
Good morning.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Blue Williams. May I speak with you? We have a difficult gaming question we're trying to settle. I want to ask for your help with our very important poll.
We being the old heads at Gamers Week podcasts. This is one of Ryan's polls, I expect.
It is, yes.
May I see the poll choices?
Certainly.
Do you think you can dissect my retro gaming opinions with this blunt little tool?
No, that's not it at all. We're just trying to generate some conversation and engagement
A census taker once tried to test me at Tetris. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Yes.
Fly back to Twitter, little starling.
Fly, fly, fly.
Well done.
That was great. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Oh man, I was anticipating the, and you delivered.
Of course, that's the payoff of the whole thing.
I loved how you got the country voice down. That was pretty cool.
I got to ask though, were you also the voice of Dr. Lecter?
No, that was an AI voice.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, man, you're
Great. So we got movie quotes, we've got songs. This is, man, I see a great future for us with this thing.
You guys raised the bar. I'm not going to sing, so I had to come up with something else. All right, every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP. That is our very important poll. And if you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. So the question for this week, which video game has the worst voice acting? Coming in at third place, we have Mega Man 8 with 23.1% of the votes.
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy emission from the radar room. When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.
Second place was Resident Evil with 25.1%.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life. But Barry, didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
And the winner, Zelda Wand of Gamelon with 37.2% of the votes.
Zelda, Duke Onkled is under attack by the evil forces of Ganon. I'm going to Gamelon to aid him.
But Father, what if something happens to you?
I'll take the Triforce of Courage to protect me. If you don't hear from me in a month, send Link.
Impa?
Don't worry, Zelda. The Triforce of Wisdom promises the king will safely return.
Enough. My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok.
We also had 16.1% of people vote other, so let's look at some of the comments from the poll. At Devman Strider says, Legend of Dragoon. Battle clips were okay, but the CGI cutscenes? Oof. At the LP Princess says, House of the Dead 2. Suffer like G did will always be a silly line, but the game is so campy that it makes sense.
Absolutely.
At Samson 7.1 says, Tales of Destiny 2. It was so bad. When I first saw the trailer, I thought some amateur was lampooning it. At Punk Days says, Wand of Gamelon is real bad from what I've seen on YouTube, but what resonates with me is Symphony of the Night, surely because of how much I've played it. So bad it's good?
Ooh.
And Let's Play Hombre said, Dr. Light couldn't say his own name. How is Mega Man 8 not at 100%? These are big questions.
Indeed.
Yes.
So how did you vote in the poll, Ryan?
All of these, I think, are really good examples of just some either campy dialogue, like really bad script writing, or just things that you wouldn't expect characters to sound like. But I think the one that encompasses all of those things, in my opinion, is Mega Man 8. Now,
You're here.
Right. So you would never expect Mega Man to have like a high-pitched voice.
Like a little girl voice.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not even like sometimes it's a woman doing a little boy's voice. It's not even that. It's like this is a 6-year-old girl playing Mega Man.
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
I completely agree. And also, of course, Dr. Light sounds like they just grabbed a guy off of the street and was like, just read this for us. And of course, his pronunciation ain't great.
I'll get my bottle of vodka when we're done, right?
Right, exactly. And honestly, he flubs a bunch of lines and they just keep it in. Like, whatever, I guess. Apparently, an additional take was not in the budget. So there you go. And then also they mispronounced the name of bass as bass in this one. It was almost like people who worked at Capcom weren't even in the freaking room when we decided to record this. So that hits all the levels for me. Mispronunciation as well. Poor writing. Mega Man and Dr. Light do not sound correct. And it's like they mailed it in. So Mega Man 8 is going to be my choice.
Okay. How did you vote, Donnie?
The one that sticks out to me, I haven't played Mega Man 8, but Resident Evil, I have played that one. And just the voice acting was really bad in that one. I remember the whole, Jill, if you, the master of unlocking, would unlock this door. And you're like, really? But I would also like to give a notable mention to a game that I'm playing again recently, Silent Hill 2.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I think the voice acting in that one is really bad, especially Maria. Like she just starts wigging out, like, hey, anyway, I'm glad you're okay. And she's like, anyway?
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway?
Anyway? What do you mean? Like, hey there, ho there. I'm not too enthused with the voice acting of that one. So I guess for me, it's a toss up between Resident Evil and Silent Hill 2.
Good choice.
All right.
Blue, what about you?
So I think there's not a bad choice on this list. You could make an argument for any of them. Mm-hmm. Resident Evil, though, I think is actually, I'll say it's the best of the worst because at least it looks like the casting makes sense. They did the best with what they could. And yeah, it's like, okay, the voice actors, their delivery is weird, but they say things correctly. They pronounce the names correctly and all that. Mega Man 8, for all the reasons you described, is just a complete dumpster fire. Everything you said is true, from the weird casting to the bad pronunciations to the fact that they flubbed the lines and didn't bother just to redo it real fast and put that one in instead. It would take 5 seconds, but they didn't even bother to do that. And it's such a weird contrast with how good the animation is in the cutscenes.
Right, for sure.
So it's like they went all out, put all the budget into the really, really cool anime style animations. And then it's like, well, we got $2 left over for voice acting. Go hire the bum down the corner. That's got to be the worst one in my book.
And isn't that the game where it's the jump slide?
I don't remember which one that is.
Yeah, I think it's either 7 or 8. I'm fairly certain it's 8. So that on top of that, where in the middle of the game, it's like jump, slide, jump, slide.
Yeah.
Jump, slide.
You're like, nope, I'm going to kill you just to shut you up.
Right. It's like, shut up.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's take a look at our patron shoutouts.
Well, we couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Mega Retro Man, Gamatroid, Michael LeKite, Emo S, Bill Tucker, The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcake's #1 Stan, Ducks with Thick Thighs, RGB admits Die Hard is a Christmas movie. What's next? He's gonna say Tears of Kingdom is a real Zelda game. Apparently the G in Dottie G Retro stands for George Michael. Something nice and or funny about Blue so she doesn't feel left out. The Pegging Podcast with Ben Dover and Phil McCracken. Wizard of Zardoz, Bobson Dugnut, Retro Blast Pat, Great Saiyaman 81, B&T Zilla Guy, Geek With That, Johnny Boombox, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Steven San, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Ducks in Disguise, Jim and Colleen, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, The Redox PDX Family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Huge Thanks, #1 Blue Six Voice Fan, Random Retro Dude, Princess Kitty Mew Mew, and Rai Rai's Secret Best Friend. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope that you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing, like prizes and giveaway. And you'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast, Gamers Week Uncut Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/GamersWeek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
All right, folks, let's take a look at our headlines for this week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know, what are your favorite video game TV shows? Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. Video game TV shows. Are we talking like the old cartoons? Are we talking about game shows with video games in them?
I guess it's up to your interpretation.
Right. My vote was going to be Attack of the Show back on the old G4 network.
Yes, I loved Attack of the Show.
A lot of good nostalgia with that one. It was a network that was difficult to get because it wasn't on your average cable package either. So you had to pay extra for this. That's why I appreciate it so much more.
Says the rich kid.
Oh, shut your mouth.
Not only did you have cable, you had the more expensive cable that allowed you to watch this show.
I hate you so much, guys.
I especially liked Attack of the Show because of Olivia Munn.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, yes.
That explains a lot about the popularity of it. All right, first up tonight from GamesIndustry.biz, Amazon and Embracer partner for new Lord of the Rings MMO. Amazon is taking a second stab at creating an MMO based on the Lord of the Rings, following the cancellation of a similar project 2 years ago. The company announced today that it has reached an agreement with Embracer Group, which owns Middle-earth Enterprises, to develop and publish an online multiplayer game based on Tolkien's renowned fantasy work. The game will be developed by Amazon Games Orange County, the studio behind the retail giant's previous MMO New World, and will be released for PC and consoles. Speaking to GamesIndustry.biz, Amazon Games Vice President Christoph Hartmann said the game is still in its very early stages, but confirmed it will feature stories and characters from both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Amazon previously announced in 2019 that it was working with China-based games firm Leyou Technologies on a Lord of the Rings MMO, but this was canceled in 2021 due primarily to Tencent acquiring Leyou in 2020. While the game is still in very early stages, Hartman is optimistic about the potential for such a project. My ambition is to make it the largest MMO out there, he told us, and what I really want to achieve with it is to take MMOs beyond the traditional customer, and that's why I really like that license. Being in the games industry, we all like Lord of the Rings in some form. I read the book when I was a kid, I watched the movies, and we have some people in the studio who even speak Elvish. I have no clue what they're talking about. They will make sure it's really true to the IP. I want to make it very accessible, easy to play, hard to master, that kind of approach. I think that's where the IP can hopefully help us to bring new people into a genre, which is beautiful. It's as good as it gets for gaming.
As your resident Lord of the Rings dork, I am very excited at the prospect of this. And it makes sense because Amazon, I think it is Amazon that released Rings of Power, which was, of course, kind of the telling of pre-Lord of the Rings book. So stuff from the Silmarillion and beyond from the First and Second Age. But I would love them to take that in that direction, making it something that's more relevant to what's going on with Rings of Power. Just because with Lord of the Rings, the Third Age is an important part of the history of Lord of the Rings, but it's limited to where you can take it. And so I think if they were to take it back into a realm where maybe not your average player is 100% familiar with everything that's happening in that section of the history of the books, but it's still familiar enough that they would be able to recognize certain characters, certain races of, beings and that kind of thing. I really hope that that's the route that they take, is that they do the first and second age with this one. But either that, trying to make it an MMO, I'm not a huge MMO fan though, so it's a little bit of disappointment for me on that one. But if they are truly bringing in the right people, which it sounds like they are, because they've got people who speak Elvish in the office, I could probably get on board with this and see where it takes me. So cautiously optimistic, I think, is where I'm at.
Yeah, if they have people who took the trouble to learn Elvish, I feel like they would be sticklers for accuracy, which
of course.
I didn't see Rings of Power at all, but that was a lot of the criticism that I read about the show, was that they played fast and loose with the lore and kind of did what they wanted to with it. And I guess especially if they're doing it with characters, like Frodo and Gandalf and Gollum. Everybody's seen those movies and everybody knows the story already. So they are going to have to kind of find a way to stay true to that lore, but while also not just rehashing the same stuff that everybody knows. It will be an interesting challenge.
And one of the problems you ran into with Rings of Power, if I understand it correctly, is that they couldn't get the licensing for the Silmarillion from Tolkien's estate. But the thing is, with those books in particular, there's not a lot of detail. So you can kind of play a little bit fast and loose.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought you said a Tolkien book didn't have a lot of detail.
Touche. Well, it sure is enough described trees for about 5 pages too long. But it's just like a sequence of events. It doesn't get into the full story behind things, because the Silmarillion is just one book and covers 2 ages, where Lord of the Rings is kind of the end of the 3rd age.
Nerd alert!
Nerd alert is right.
Every time you say age, my eyes kind of gloss over. You lose me for a little bit.
Sorry about that.
I'm wondering if this is actually a good idea. Are MMOs really even that popular anymore? I know that World of Warcraft is kind of dwindling down as far as its popularity is concerned. There have been other IPs such as The Matrix, which tried to do an MMO back in its popularity, and that didn't work.
I think that's a spot on observation. What's popular right now is live service games. So do you really want a battle royale Lord of the Rings game?
You don't want it, no, but I'm pretty sure they're going to put it out because it's going to make some money.
Right.
And people right now pay for subscriptions to your Xbox Live, your PlayStation Plus, or what have you, to spend an additional $10 a month, which it probably is. It's going to be a base of like $9.99 to play this game per month. I don't know.
And there's also currently a Lord of the Rings online that exists.
Is there?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Now I feel like I should get back my nerd card.
You could question how popular it is. Obviously, it's lasted 16 years, but if the resident video game Lord of the Rings nerd of the group
didn't even hear of it,
that makes you wonder.
Well, I wish them luck. I do. I would hate for them to lose their player base to a game made by Amazon, for crying out loud. What they should do is make Peter Jackson a playable character.
That would be funny.
And you're the guy who chomps on a big carrot in the middle of the town of Bree.
I hope he's there. That would be hilarious.
Because that's his
you go
cameo.
To Bree and he's standing there. Mm-hmm.
All right, next up from USA Today. It's in the game. EA Sports college football video game will allow FBS players to opt in. Fans of the widely popular EA Sports college football gaming franchise have a reason to rejoice. EA Sports has contracted one-team partners to incorporate the names, images, and likenesses into the game, which is being relaunched with a summer 2024 release date. The company confirmed to USA Today Sports the agreement will allow all eligible FBS players to opt in to have their likeness incorporated, and players will be compensated for opting in. We've wanted to feature collegiate athletes in a meaningful way from the start of our journey to bring an EA Sports college football experience back to our fans. What is unclear is the amount of payout for players who decide to opt in. An EA Sports representative told ESPN that the goal was to be as inclusive and equitable as possible. The franchise has been discontinued since 2013. The last college football game the video game franchise produced was NCAA Football 14, with former Michigan quarterback Denard Robertson gracing the cover. The series was discontinued as the debate over student athletes being compensated for their names, images, and likenesses continued around the country and in the legislative bodies. The old video game franchise did not use actual football player names, but the roster closely mirrored the actual ones with player numbers and positions tied to the general physical appearance of those playing on fields on Saturdays.
I think this is a great idea because it's about time that the collegiate athletes started getting compensated for their likeness in college sports video games. And B, I'm finally glad, even though I'll never play it, I'm glad that there's a new NCAA football game coming out just so people who spend about $100 on NCAA football 14 can just start crying, because now that game is going to be completely worthless.
I knew that was coming.
And it'll now be a $10 game, a $5 game. And you'll have those one collectors out there who'll be like, no, man, no, it's still worth this much. Come on, give me $100 for it. But I've got this brand new NCAA game that I can play. Well, but it's not this one. This was the last one made. No, this one is the new one made.
But it's water graded.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I bet you there's a bunch of those in a WADA plastic case.
I'm pretty sure there are.
Yep.
Why shouldn't these kids make a little bit of money? I mean, granted, I kind of feel like they're already making money underneath the table by getting paid.
Oh, they totally are.
Yeah. But take the kids who are playing it by the book, right? Being 100% legit, not accepting any money because they don't want to ruin their future, so to speak. And now they're going to offer their likeness to be had in this game and get compensated a little bit for it. Now, we don't know how much they're going to get paid, what that's going to look like. If it's going to look like, for every copy sold, you get $5 or something like that.
Well, even then, that would be great. I'm thinking it's going to be more like half a cent. Because you think about how many different players they're going to have to spread those royalties over.
Oh, absolutely. So it's going to be like a class action lawsuit where you'll get like $1.37.
Right.
They make millions and you get $1.37.
Right, exactly.
I'm curious as to what the rules are with the NCAA about accepting money. Their take forever is to preserve the amateurism of college sports by not allowing them to get paid. So I'm curious if this violates that rule and what the NCAA will have to say about that. Because, I mean, if you look at the life of a lot of these college athletes, they're not even able to feed themselves sometimes, but their faces and all those things are being put up on posters that are up on the walls at their school, and that school is getting all these endowments and things. People are going, I mean,
all this merchandise that the school sells with their face on it, but they can't even sleep on somebody's couch lest it be considered compensation and they lose their eligibility.
Right. So I'm curious to see if the NCAA has a rule against that.
I'm reading something from the New York Times. It says, for more than a century, or as long as the NCAA has presided over college sports, athletes had no legal way to earn anything more tangible from their achievements than plaques and trophies. That changed on July 1st, 2021, following a Supreme Court decision against the NCAA. The organization ended nearly all its restrictions on what athletes could earn from the use of their names, images, and likenesses.
Gotcha.
Overnight, those athletes could make deals with companies and endorse their products. They could even accept money from boosters in transactions that previously would have led to severe sanctions against their team.
Perfect. So this is taking that ruling and now actually giving them what they asked for.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a coincidence that this game is showing up at this time.
Right.
Probably the day after that ruling was made, they started developing a new NCAA football game.
From Eurogamer, Summer Game Fest touts 40-plus partners, including PlayStation and Xbox. We're less than a month away from the start of this year's Summer Game Fest season, and Jeff Keighley is starting to crank the hype handle, revealing this year's event will feature updates from 40-plus partners, including PlayStation and Xbox. Summer Game Fest officially begins on June 8th, with a live showcase promising a mix of premieres, gameplay demos, and announcements, but it'll continue on well after that, with various other industry events and showcases set to fall under the Summer Game Fest banner throughout the season. That's about as much detail as we'd heard previously, but the official Summer Game Fest Twitter account has now revealed a sizable list of game companies confirmed to be taking part in some capacity, including big names like PlayStation, Xbox.
Sounds like the Mars attacks. Xbox.
Capcom, Sega CD. Oh, Sega. Man, my heart just sank.
That was a roller coaster of emotion for you. You're like, Sega CD Projekt Red.
It was. Sega CD Projekt, Bandai Namco, EA, Epic Games, Netflix, Activision, Square Enix, Ubisoft, and Warner Brothers. The Summer Game Fest Cross-Industry Showcase is being held at the YouTube Theater in Inglewood, California, in front of a live audience of fans on June 8th. The indie-focused Day of the Dev stream airs immediately after. Xbox is up next on June 11th, with Bethesda's Starfield Direct set to air straight after, and Ubisoft takes to the stage on June 12th. Summer Game Fest is just part of gaming's jam-packed month of June. Other events include Guerrilla Collective's Showcase on June 7th, Future Games Show on June 10th, Wholesome Direct, which is still to be determined, and an unconfirmed Nintendo Direct.
Finally, we get some news.
I know. I'm so freaking excited. Holy crap. Like the last month or 6 weeks, we have been scraping the bottom of the barrel like every single week for something to talk about. And now we're going to get all the news all at once.
My body is ready.
My body is ready. Nice. So EA's gone, but everybody's jumping on the bandwagon of Summer Game Fest.
E3 is gone, not EA.
Yeah, I'm just going to say E3, and could you edit that in?
You're asking a lot from me right now.
Nope, we'll leave it.
That's not a lot. That's not a lot.
It is a lot. You don't know how it works.
Yes, I do. I've edited the podcast. Now I know that I've reacted this way, so it's all staying in. Great. But what an exciting kind of showcase that we're coming up on. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions that we are expecting to hear from when it comes to PlayStation, Xbox, Capcom, Activision, Starfield, maybe?
I mean, we can make some generalized predictions based on what these companies usually come up with. Like PlayStation's going to talk about Final Fantasy 16.
Right.
Xbox is going to talk about Starfield. Capcom's probably going to talk about Resident Evil 4. Activision is going to talk more Call of Duty stuff. They're probably going to have something that's way too long about Warzone. Square Enix is also going to talk Final Fantasy 16. Ubisoft is going to talk about their new Assassin's Creed projects coming up. I mean, it's going to be new news to cover, but probably not a lot of it is going to be surprising.
And Netflix is going to talk about Trivia Crack 2, right?
And of course, Sega will show up and announce Angry Bird for consoles.
No! You had me at Sega.
I know.
Crushed my dreams.
It's so fun to bring your emotions up and then shatter them.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I said, you started the show that way, and I was like, okay, I see what kind of show it's going to be. You chose violence. I'm just perpetuating it.
If the Dreamcast 2 comes out, if they announce that, Donnie is going to spend an entire episode just doing the Nelson at Blue.
You know what? If they announce the Dreamcast 2, you're allowed to do that. I won't even be mad about it.
No, why are we doing the Dreamcast? Why not the Saturn 2?
I think originally when we were talking about this, your prediction for the first 3 episodes was that there was going to be a Dreamcast 2.
Huh.
I know you got to think back. And the only reason I know that off the top of my head is because I listened to episode 3 by mistake. I was riding in the car and it turned on after the most current episode. I was like, all right, I'll listen to it.
I don't foresee a Dreamcast 2, but I mean, I think that the desire and the want is there for people to play newer retro games, as we've seen with some of the developers who make games for like the older systems, like the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, etc.
Yeah.
Why not capitalize on that. Make your own console that focuses strictly on that kind of technology with, of course, with the technology now being more advanced, but using some of the older technology fused with newer stuff, I think it might be great.
And I think they tried to do that with like the Ouya when that came out. It was supposed to be, I know, I'm just saying, maybe, having a crowdfunded console probably wasn't the best way to do that because they don't have a lot of working capital to bring in people, but it was about like indie developers could upload their games onto the Ouya and they could stream it and all that stuff. I don't think I would be opposed to it if Sega took that route and said, hey, all these indie developers, we'll license out the games for you. We'll give you a cut like you're getting on Steam, but this is a dedicated console strictly for retro folks. I would love that. I would love that.
So if Sega shows up at Summer Game Fest and announces the Ouya 2, are you still going to be so happy and making Nelson noises?
It wouldn't be the Ouya, okay? It's not going to be the Ouya.
Answer the question.
No, don't lump that in with Sega, okay? I refuse to answer that bullshit question. You're poking the bear here.
The bear started it. All right, next from Entertainment Weekly, Nicolas Cage to shake the fabric of reality with upcoming role in Dead by Daylight universe. Nicolas Cage has joined the Dead by Daylight universe. A just-released trailer for the horror title features a digitized representation of the actor and a voiceover, presumably from Cage. There is nothing more powerful than imagination, the Con Air and National Treasure star in tones. It can shake the fabric of reality, transforming everything you may think you know. It's the performance of a lifetime, gaming studio Behavior Interactive wrote in its caption, Dead by Daylight, Nicolas Cage, coming to a realm near you. According to the clip, we can learn more about the mysterious collaboration on June 5th.
July 5th or June 5th?
Did I say June?
You did.
Okay. According to the clip... go f*** yourself. According to the clip, we can learn more about the mysterious collaboration on July 5th. Dead by Daylight is an online survival horror game that has previously licensed characters from horror franchises, including A Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser. In March, Blumhouse and Atomic Monster announced that they were teaming with Behavior Interactive to develop a film adaptation of it. Cage is a well-known horror buff whose previous on-screen genre credits include Vampire's Kiss, Mandy, Color Out of Space, the remake of The Wicker Man, and Willy's Wonderland. Most recently, the actor played Count Dracula in this year's Renfield opposite Nicholas Holt's titular familiar. His other upcoming projects include the sequel Lords of War and the psychological horror film Sympathy for the Devil, out July 28, which co-stars Joel Kinnaman.
Why couldn't you just get the med kit out the box?
I know this is all going to be based off his Renfield character, which I'm fine with. That, as I understand, that movie is really good in it. At least that's what I've heard. I haven't watched it myself. So,
as I understand it, he's just going to be playing himself, like the unbearable weight of massive talent, or whatever that title of that movie is.
Which is a great movie.
Which is a great movie. I really enjoyed that. That he's Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage, and he'll probably be a survivor.
Oh, that's boring. Come on.
No,
make
it's
him
not.
a freaking killer.
Like, imagine you're in a game and everybody chooses Nicolas Cage.
Right. So many Nicolas Cages running around.
And then the killer is just like, I'm surrounded by Nicolas Cage.
I don't understand what the setting is going to be, what environments it's going to be. Like, are we going inside Mount Rushmore? Is that where this is going to take place because of National Treasure? Is it going to be something to do with Face Off? Like, I'm intrigued. I thought that maybe this was actually going to be a movie starring Nicolas Cage, because I know they are making a Dead by Daylight movie, and I thought maybe this was an announcement that he was going to be in it, starring in it. But the fact that they're making him a playable character, like DLC, I got to see what this is all about, man.
I want it to be like Gone in 60 Seconds. So instead of fixing generators, you gotta boost cars. And that's how you escape.
Oh, you got to start the car instead of the generator. Yeah.
Yep.
The GT500. Is it the GT500? Yes, Nicholas, just start the damn thing.
And in next year's Dead by Daylight update, it's going to be Bobcat Goldthwait. You're going to be able to play as him.
Yeah. Start the generator. All right, let's take a look at our top 3 new releases.
All right, first up is Humanity for the PS5, PSVR 2, PlayStation 4, PSVR, and PC. A unique blend of puzzle solving and action platforming, Humanity is a puzzle action game where you become a Shiba Inu to command massive marching crowds of people to jump, turn, push, float, shoot, and climb their way to salvation across 90 story mode stages. Bring your ideas to life using the intuitive stage creator or browse an ever-growing library of stages created by other players. Next up is Outlast Trials for PC. Set in the era of the Cold War, human guinea pigs are involuntarily recruited by the good folks at the Murkoff Corporation to test advanced methods of brainwashing and mind control. In pure Outlast fashion, the core gameplay involves avoiding enemies, hiding from them, and trying to run away. You can choose to complete the trials by yourself, or you can tackle them in a team of 2, 3, or 4 players. Co-op is never forced when it comes to mandatory objectives, but working together can be highly beneficial. Whatever the number of players in your party, it's about surviving and getting out. And last up is Lego 2K Drive. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Welcome to Bricklandia, home of a massive open-world Lego driving adventure. Race anywhere, play with anyone, build your dream rides, and defeat a cast of wild racing rivals for the coveted Sky Trophy. In Lego 2K Drive, your awesome transforming vehicle gives you the freedom to speed seamlessly across riveting racetracks, off-road terrain, and open waters. Roam around Bricklandia in local split screen or join your driving buddies online. Let's take a look at these 3. Blue, what are you in for this week?
Well, I'm not super into Legos. I know when this game was announced, people were describing it as the Mario Kart killer. So for that sense, I kind of want to try it. But at the same time, there have been countless other racing games that have tried to dethrone Mario Kart and none have ever done it, ever even come close. But I guess you never know. I'll keep an open mind. The Outlast Trials, I don't want to play because it's first person, but I am really looking forward to watching other people play it. Perhaps even Donnie, since he is so fun to watch play horror games.
You don't know me.
With any luck, we'll get some new memes out of it. And Humanity, it really wasn't on my radar, but I've been hearing a lot of really amazing things about it. It's a puzzle game, which sounds great. You play as a dog. I mean, who doesn't like that? So of these 3, that would probably be the first one I would look at.
Very nice. Donnie, what about you?
Lego 2K Drive, I've seen the trailer for it. Doesn't look to me like it's a Mario Kart killer. I don't know. I'm not getting a sense of the tracks have really any type of definition to them. It looks like just open world driving. I could be wrong. The fact that you can create your own vehicle, that's kind of nice. But I just don't think I'll be investing any time into this driver. Humanity, I like puzzle games. This one looks a little weird. I'd have to sit down and see what's involved with it. Because yes, like Blue said, you play a dog and you're herding a whole bunch of people across puzzles. And I don't know how it works. It looks like it's the old game Lemmings for like PC.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, there's definitely a Lemmings vibe to it.
Yeah, so I'd have to sit down and see what that's about. I'm not sure if I'd spend a lot of time with it, but it looks interesting, which leads me to the Outlast Trials. This game looks creepy as hell. It looks right up my alley. It's a horror game. Yes, I'm probably going to play it. Yes, you're probably going to get a lot of new memes from it. Me getting scared out of my jeans. From what I'm seeing, I definitely like the Outlast Trials, and I will probably pick that one up.
Nice. What do you think, Ryan?
This might be one of those situations where none of them are really tickling my fancy, per se.
Oh.
Lego games I've never really gotten into. And I don't particularly like racing games. So that's like two strikes against this one. Humanity, definitely. You're a dog that's playing Lemmings, basically. It's what it looks like.
And you drop a few people off the side of the cliff in the effort to solve the puzzle, and it's fine.
Right. I do like the idea that there is a stage creator, though. I think that's kind of cool. But at this moment, it's not something that I'm like, I need to own. Outlast Trials looks interesting. And I definitely think that Donnie playing it would be fun to watch. For me, though, a game where you avoid enemies, hide from them, or run away doesn't sound too fun. I want to blow stuff up. I want to kill things.
But with the horror aspect, hiding from them, that I think enhances the scenario that you're in.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
it's like that Dead by Daylight where if you hide in a locker and you see the killer like roaming by, your heartbeat starts to increase, and then they go by and you're like, he stops, looks over at the locker, and you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And he leaves. You're like, oh my God. Oh.
And then he opens the locker and you're So yeah, overall, like it's not my genre. So Lemmings is not my genre, horror games are not my genre, and driving games are not my genre. So it's a 0 for 3 for me this week.
Not my game, not my genre.
All right, folks. So let's get to the moment that I'm sure many of you are waiting for. Let's go ahead and announce our giveaway winner for this month's Gamers Week podcast giveaway. As I'm sure many of you know, we are giving away a brand new copy of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for the Nintendo Switch. We had 609 entries into this contest.
609.
Yeah, and I'm proud to announce our winner for that. So if you can give me a drum roll.
Give me a beat.
That was different.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to keep going, to be honest with you. So the winner for this month's giveaway is Lyrical J. Lyrical J, congratulations. Feel free to reach out to me at Retro Game Brews via DM to send me your information. And thank you for everybody who participated in this month's giveaway. I will point out that I think, 4 out of the last 5 that we have given away have been people who utilized the option to get 3 entries. So just saying, odds are better in your favor if you decide to go ahead and show us you're listening to Gamers Week.
And now on to our main topic for the week. From Den of Geek, Tears of the Kingdom sales should be a wake-up call for gaming. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has only been officially available for about 5 days. However, early sales reports for the game are slowly coming in, and they tell a story that the rest of the industry should be paying attention to. We officially know that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has sold 10 million copies worldwide since its launch. For those wondering, 4 million of those copies were sold in the US, and 2.24 million were sold in Japan during that time period. It's not entirely clear if that figure includes all digital sales as well, though that seems to be the case. But Nintendo has confirmed that Tears of the Kingdom is the fastest selling Zelda game ever. You might say, of course, it's selling quickly. It's a major entry into a major gaming franchise. While that's true, don't assume Tears of the Kingdom was guaranteed to be a sales success. For as popular and influential as The Legend of Zelda is, its sales have historically been relatively modest. Before Breath of the Wild, the best-selling Zelda game was Twilight Princess, and that only sold about 9 million units. The best-selling Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, went on to sell a stunning 30 million plus units, and Tears of the Kingdom is leaving that game's early sales figures in the dust.
In some ways, the situation resembles what happened to Elden Ring. From Software's previous games, most notably the Dark Souls franchise, were highly acclaimed and sold fairly well, but they had a reputation. For a time, there was a perceived limit to how well such games could perform. However, Elden Ring's open-world structure, George R.R. Martin's partnership, and almost universal critical acclaim shattered that supposed limit. Elden Ring has now sold 20+ million copies. That's the first lesson the industry should learn from Tears of the Kingdom and, by extension, Elden Ring. Open-world games are still popular, but too many of them play things too safe. They too often follow an open-world formula under the belief that said formula is less likely to fail. That may be true for franchises where the formula is expected, such as Far Cry, but up-and-coming trend chasers like the recent Saints Row reboot have shown that there are limits to such familiarity. Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom are challenging, inventive, and pleasantly non-linear open-world games that rarely hold players' hands. Granted, they do that in wildly different ways. Tears of the Kingdom is more experimental, and Elden Ring focuses more on combat-based RPG adventuring, but their similarities are more striking. They treat their audiences like the open-world veterans that many of them are at this point. Both games expect their players to experiment, fail, and not become discouraged by the process. Yes, they both benefited from some pre-release hype and name recognition, but the post-release praise and sales show that there is a market for those kinds of experiences.
However, at a time when game costs, production schedules, and download sizes are ballooning at a rate that doesn't always feel representative of what we actually get, games like Tears of the Kingdom feel like a breath of the wild, fresh air. You never once questioned the time and money that went into it, yet it clocks in at a mere 16 gigabytes, and visual shortcomings aside, it runs beautifully. This is a game that feels like it took 6-ish years to make, and not because of the way the light bounces off of a puddle. The fact of the matter is that gaming industry doesn't turn on a dime. What trends developers chase are usually the most obvious and easy to replicate. Even then, trends are still being chased longer after those trends have faded. However, Tears of the Kingdom confirms what Breath of the Wild previously taught us about the kinds of gaming experiences that people are starved for and how few of them actually get. How much longer will it take for other studios to start benefiting from slightly harder lessons? So, Blue, as somebody who has experienced this game in how many hours would you say? 40, 80 so far?
At least 400. Those are rookie numbers. You got to pump those numbers up.
What do you think? Is it unique enough from Breath of the Wild that you're experiencing something new? Is it familiar enough from Breath of the Wild that it still feels fun? Like, what are your first thoughts of it?
Yes, it is extremely different from Breath of the Wild because they've added this building mechanic, which if you've been online at all, you've seen all kinds of crazy creations, sometimes sadistic creations that people have made. And people are really taking this building mechanic and making it their own and just going nuts with it. And at the same time, it's also extremely familiar because a lot of the map is still the same Hyrule that we remember, but just slightly different because of the way the landscapes have changed. So if you spent a lot of time in Breath of the Wild, it is really fun to go to places that should be familiar, but they're just not quite. And being able to notice the changes and the attention to detail that Nintendo put in the different corners of this land has been really fun so far. The building mechanic has ended up being fairly divisive, which I think probably Nintendo didn't anticipate, although it's not something that's new to the Breath of the Wild. I guess I'll call it a franchise at this point, even though there's only 2 games. The games have always been divisive because of the breakable weapons, and now they're divisive because of the building mechanics, because a lot of people aren't jiving with it. And I will agree that, especially in the early game, the building mechanics really slow down the flow of the game. Like, you'll be running along, adventuring, and then wham, you got to drop everything and you got to build this thing. I don't always want to. Sometimes I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come back to this later because I don't feel like building. I want to keep adventuring. But I guess it depends on your perspective. You know, games like Minecraft are really popular. Games like Fortnite are really popular. Both of those have really heavy building elements. So I understand why Nintendo did this, and especially because Breath of the Wild was a game where you could play how you wanted a lot of the times. And so this just gives the gamer more tools. The building mechanics are really well done. I can see why a lot of people love them. I can also see why a lot of people don't love them. I'm somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I find it irritating, but sometimes it is kind of fun.
What I've heard, because I kind of asked this question today on Twitter, like how are you enjoying it? And one person had put, if they named it Zelda Builders, I would have known not to buy it. So I asked people, like, you know, what are your thoughts on it so far? And the overwhelming response was more or less, the building aspect to it isn't required all the time. So it's not something where the game itself, like Minecraft, you have to consistently build. Or like Fortnite, where if you're not building, you're at a disadvantage. Where there are times at which you're going to have to build something. It's typically in a dungeon, or you can choose to do so at a shrine, but there's a choice there. So they've made it so that it's not 100% necessary all the time for the game, which I think is a really good choice by Nintendo, knowing that not everybody's going to want to play it exactly the same way. In the vein of being an open world game, you don't want that. You want people to experience it the way they want to. So I think that was a really solid choice. And I don't see myself necessarily getting into the game per se, but the fact that it's living up to people's expectations, regardless of how you want to play, I think was definitely a solid move.
What do they mean by it's a wake-up call for gaming? Are they saying that because of the fact that this entry is doing so well, that it's not the norm, it's not the battle royale, it's not the pumping out something that everybody else is doing, that it can be successful? Is that what they're saying?
That was my interpretation. It's not a first-person shooter. It's not a free-to-play online service game. There's no battle passes or anything like that. It's an offline single-player experience, which the gaming industry for a while has been treating kind of like a pariah game. And as we've talked about before, we get it. They're extremely expensive and time-consuming to make. And if they fail, all that money and time is down the drain. Right. You can't afford to have a bunch of Forspokens. But when they are successful, they're some of the best games that are ever made. Like when we recently talked about GQ came out with that list of 100 best video games of all time. How many of them were single player games?
Right.
Almost all of them.
Almost, yeah.
So it's, I think, both nice to see that these types of games still resonate with people, the single player, just kind of open world adventure experience, but also the fact that, gamers are ready to be challenged. We don't always need easy modes. We don't always need really explicit tutorials and all kinds of hand holding. Just let us play, and we'd like to do that.
I like what you said when you mentioned the fact that it's a single player game. It doesn't offer a lot of additional monies coming in, like the multiplayer games, like the first person shooters, like the battle passes and all that crap. That you're not extending the cost life of that particular game. It's you spend all this time and money creating a product, making it ready for launch, mind you, and then giving it to the players and letting them have that experience that is going to end eventually. It might have that replay value if you want to pick up and do the story again. But for the most part, it's one and done, as opposed to a game like Dead by Daylight, where you can just continue to pump out DLCs at $10 or $20 or what have you. And the next thing you know, you've spent $1,000 on a game as opposed to just $69.99.
And in the interest of fairness, Breath of the Wild did have some DLC.
Yeah, but it's not like where you can buy all 900 seeds and just pay money for that.
Right. It's not any sort of pay to win. It's not where every time you log into the menu, they're pestering you to go to some store and download a bunch of skins.
Right.
Looking at you, Bandai Namco.
And Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, and Ubisoft. A lot of them. Like, I really like the Tales series, but they're constantly pestering you to go buy different outfits for your characters. I'm like, who the cares?
It was even that way with Bomberman R for the Nintendo Switch, where they wanted you to buy additional skins for your Bomberman. And constantly pestering you about buying it. I was like, I don't care. I just want the Bomberman, for crying out loud.
Yeah. So I guess in that respect, this and Elden Ring prove that you can just make a self-contained, single-player, offline experience, and you will make money hand over fist if you do it well.
That's the risk, though.
Right. I know that's a big if.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that's a big if. Right. These games are so celebrated because they don't come out every week.
And it's much easier and less costly to develop a quick battle royale game, live service game, than it is to create an entire expansive world like this. So the risk is there for companies if they're not making something that's as good as Elden Ring or Tears of the Kingdom. Are they really still going to invest? So I agree that the demand is out there for games like this. I just don't know if this is truly the wake-up call yet. Right. I would have to probably see a bunch more of these come out and see it resurgence of games like this with developers that are willing to take that risk.
developers know that's not where the money is going to come in from.
Right.
It's going to come in from your battle pass, your season pass, stuff like that. This is basically, in my opinion, it's a bone they're throwing the gamers.
Ouch.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah, we'll give you this one-off single player experience. There you go. Have at it. Now back to our multiplayer battle royale game that we've been working on, and here you go. And guess what? It's mobile too.
Oh.
Well, if this is just a bone to gamers, and it's a hell of a bone.
It's one of those big, nice rawhides, you know?
You can just sit there and gnaw on it for weeks.
I will argue, though, that I think there is a lot of replayability with this game because of the building mechanic, strangely enough, even though I think it's divisive to some people. If you went through and played it without building, you can definitely go back and play it again with building. And I guarantee you that there will be an entire group of people who spend, hundreds of hours building these really insane mechanism machines, like Rube Goldberg machine style stuff, right?
That's what I see.
Well, I mean, I've already seen clips of, there was a clip where somebody was going to fight this boss, and they essentially created a laser Gundam to fly in and kill this boss for them while they stood back with a shield and just watched. I was like, that is cool.
So I foresee something like the World Tears of the Kingdom building championships where people just come together and build some of the craziest things, and then you vote on them and say, oh, look, okay, this is the craziest thing that we've ever seen. Or they have different categories and classes.
Yeah, you could set it up so that you're all given the same materials and you just have to figure something out. Yeah.
But I think that's one thing that's great about these types of open world sandbox games. Communities can take the games and make them their own.
Right.
Of course. All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by the Latest Podcast. It's a show where three friends and occasional guests play games about video games, including trivia, game show games, and more. Here's this week's trivia question. There's tons of tropes in media, video games included. One such trope is called a noob bridge, which is an area or aspect of a game that requires players to figure out a brand new game mechanic with little to no help from the game. Can you name the game from which the term noob bridge was coined? Tune into the Latest Podcast this Wednesday to hear the answer. You can find the Latest on your favorite podcast platform. We'll also have their links in the show notes.
I have never heard this term before.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it either. So when he asked me this question, I was like, no idea. I've never heard of this.
No, I've got nothing.
A brand new game mechanic with little to no help from the game. Yeah, pick your poison on that one.
I mean, it's probably named for some game where you actually had to build a bridge.
It's not about building a bridge. It's about crossing the bridge.
Was there a bridge in...
Redacted.
There was not.
Man, I couldn't even begin to guess.
I got nothing.
The answer is
redacted.
Okay.
So there's a section in which you have to...
Okay.
Yeah, that's weird. I've never heard this term.
Me neither.
All right, thank you for coming, students. Please take your seats. Welcome back to Professor Ryebread's Gaming History 101. In today's lesson, we'll talk about a plucky little toy company that used old technology to convince your parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents to buy their products, thinking they were getting you a real video game system. We, of course, will be talking about the history of Tiger Electronics. So I think whenever my generation thinks of the company Tiger Electronics, one of the first thing that comes to mind is their video game adjacent handheld LCD devices. And no matter who I talk to, everyone had at least one of these things lying around the house collecting dust at one point in their life. So Donnie Blue, I assume you can kind of attest to that?
Yes. I think we probably had every Disney one that was out. Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Aladdin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the Tiger Electronics were like the off-brand cereal you find at the store in comparison to like the Sega Genesis and the Nintendo. It really was like that.
The Fruit O's of the cereal aisle.
Exactly.
And I mean, okay, like you kind of alluded to, they were products. Like, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I kind of liked them.
And honestly, I usually played mine, which I think was the one that I had that was the main one was a football game. And I would play that when my brother was playing the Game Boy. So it's me waiting to play the Game Boy.
Exactly. In my house, we had one Game Boy that all the kids shared. And when we got booted off the TV and somebody else was playing the Game Boy, it's like, well, okay, I guess I'll pull out the Tiger Electronic.
What's interesting about Tiger, though, is that they have a really strange past. Like when I first started to research into this, I was just thinking it was going to be talking about their products, but it's actually a lot more to that. It's a combination of kind of the web of licensing agreements, success and failed launches, a few failed consoles, and actually a bitter feud between brothers that chronicles the history of Tiger. So why don't we go ahead and at least jump into it? So Tiger itself began in 1978 in Verdon Hills, Illinois, as a producer of low-tech electronic toys. And the company was founded by Gerald Rissman and his son Samuel, with Samuel's two younger brothers, Arnold and Randall, serving as executives in the organization. Now, they started off making phonographs, which, okay.
Sorry, what year was this?
Yes, I know, right? And then eventually got into toy robots, but in the early 80s, they would actually jump on the bandwagon, as many companies were doing at the time, of producing video games. So Tiger had a strange knack, though, for securing licensing deals with big-name companies, which would actually help them greater in their endeavors in the future. But one of the first examples was acquiring the license for King Kong for the Atari 2600 from Paramount. Now, if you remember your video game history, at that time, Paramount was actually suing Nintendo and all other producers of Donkey Kong for copyright infringement with the King Kong name. What makes this story interesting is that Tiger developed their King Kong game for Atari and presented it to Paramount for approval, only for Paramount to realize that it was a direct ripoff of Donkey Kong. So in the fray, Paramount actually revoked the license from Tiger, but Gerald Rissman shot back at them, stating that, hey, Paramount doesn't even own the rights to King Kong name, which was a fact that would become very relevant to the outcome of their case. And eventually they make minor changes to the game to differentiate it from Donkey Kong, but Paramount ended up losing their lawsuit in epic fashion because King Kong was considered a public domain IP. So the scramble was a much to do about nothing. And the King Kong games that Tiger made were awful. Absolutely awful.
Spoiler alert.
Right. You're going to hear a lot of that about Tiger. So moving forward, Tiger was not the first company to come out with LCD handhelds. That would be Mattel with their 1976 Auto Race game. But they were often considered to be the most associated with the genre. And in the mid to late 1980s, they would flood the market with a huge collection of licensed properties. At that time, both Gerald and Samuel would actually sell the shares of the company to Randall and Arnold. But we'll actually cover why that's relevant a little bit later on. But the games were relatively simple in design, and they used LCD screens that had a predetermined moves or actions built right in. So often it was a license for things like Disney, Marvel, even existing video games like Mega Man were an LCD handheld. I think there was even Street Fighter ones at one point. But they were more of a representation of the game than they were an actual game themselves. I think you could probably attest to that with the Disney games, right?
They tried real hard.
And often it was just like one or two directional buttons and another action button, and that's all you had. And it didn't always work either. You're just smashing the buttons going, work, damn it. But with the massive success of their LCD handheld games, they actually wanted to venture more into the realm of video games. So the R-Zone was the first cartridge-based system that consisted of an elastic strap head-mounted device that would sit inches from the player's right eye. Now, using mirror technology and a handheld controller, the R-Zone was an attempt to capture on the VR craze. With the same gameplay as their LCD games, but with an eye-straining red color. Are you guys familiar with the R-Zone at all?
I am, but I've never played it.
I think it's hard to find one that works nowadays, to be perfectly honest. Now, the system was universally panned, with David Jones of the Chicago Tribune saying, the R-Zone should be dumped into the trash where it belongs.
Ouch.
Yep.
Or in a landfill, along with E.T.
So it was around this time, so we're talking like 1995, 96, that Randy was making a lot of moves at the company to secure control over the decisions of the organization. Now, Randy actually owned 2/3 of the company stock, and Arnold was a 1/3 share owner in Tiger. Now, Randy ended up doing some shady things, in particular, eliminating cumulative voting, so essentially preventing Arnold from making a say on the board. This actually led to Arnold selling his shares of the company for $17 million, with the verbal agreement that Randy wouldn't sell the company in the future or issue an IPO. 13 months later, Randy sold the company to Hasbro for $335 million. This did not sit well with Arnold due to the promises that were made and the fact that if he had stuck around, he would have gotten 1/3 of that $335 million. Now, he ended up suing his brother for $95 million in the year 2000, and the court ended up siding with Randy, however, on the lawsuit because Arnold didn't have enough proof of the claims Randy had made about not selling Tiger.
Oof.
Ouch. So the next foray into the gaming space was really their first true handheld cartridge-based system, known as the Game.com, which was really Tiger's first serious attempt at a handheld to rival the Game Boy. Now, years earlier, though, Tiger was approached by Brazilian company Tectoy, known for popularizing the Sega Master System in Brazil. And they wanted to make a Sega Game Boy that was monochromatic, and Tiger agreed to start developing it, but unfortunately, Sega had no interest in a system without color. So still looking to make a Game Boy killer years later, after the failure of the R-Zone, they released the Game.com. Using the Penguin for licensing agreements, the Game.com would feature titles such as Batman and Robin, Sonic Jam, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Resident Evil 2, and the Lost World Jurassic Park, to name a few. Now, sadly, the system was very clunky. The small screen and low processing power meant the games were either too slow or so watered down that they barely were recognizable from its original source material. Touted as a handheld gaming device / PDA, which was all the rage at the time, it failed to act as a viable option of either of those things. Now, Tiger would serve as a subsidiary of Hasbro Corporation for the duration of its life cycle, releasing extremely popular Furby and the extremely not popular Gizmondo console, which was a gaming handheld and a sidekick style device. Now, by 2012, the company was considered defunct, but in recent years, Hasbro had started releasing new versions of the old LCD games. So there's that, I guess. But did you know that they made Furby?
I did not, but actually it makes a lot of sense. Those things are creepy as hell.
And if you remember right, too, Home Alone 2 had the Talk Boy, where Kevin McAllister recorded things and played them back. The Talk Boy itself was not a real toy at that point, and Tiger actually approached them to start making the Talk Boy themselves. And they had those commercials where the kid's in the background and he goes, "Hi kids, we're home early," and then plays it back in slow-mo, so it sounds like his parents. And the sister and her boyfriend have to jump to different sides of the couch because they were getting fresh with each other.
I like getting fresh with each other.
This is Peter McAllister, the father.
So to wrap things up, Tiger Electronics was one of the few companies that successfully released low-tech gaming devices for the masses. Now, despite the drama and poor choices of the company, I always have a soft spot for the times I played LCD football while waiting for my brother to finish up with a Game Boy. So thank you for attending today's Gaming History 101, and a huge thank you to the YouTube channel D-Pad for much of today's research. Just a reminder, if you have ideas for a story you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature your suggestion.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up this week's episode. Thank you for listening to episode 73 of Gamers Week Podcast, and a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, the Elitist Podcast, and Love Retro BTW for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Watch us on Twitch at twitch.tv/GamersWeekPodcast. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com. Or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. Or join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. While you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice.
Good night, Clarice.
These credentials expire in 1 week. You're not a real podcaster, are you?
That was actually in the original cut, but it was so long.
Oh, I got to hear the original cut.
It was like 3 minutes long.
Do we have an original cut that we could play for the patrons? Because that would be awesome.
No, I don't.
Ah, you are
yes, you do.
Killing me, Smalls.
We know you're lying.
No, I'm not lying. I cut it down. Like, I didn't keep the original. I just only kept the cut version. Next time I'll keep the whole thing.
Even more of a reason to become a Patreon subscriber.
Right, there you go.
All right, well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, folks.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok!
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
That was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.